We have just heard the stark loneliness of Jesus on the cross. He hangs there from the 3rd hour to the 9th, as we reckon time from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Until almost the end, Jesus hangs there silently. He is silent, but there is awful noise all about him. For the first 3 hours, many people pass by. They see the superscription, "The King of the Jews." They see the 2 thieves crucified with him. They see Jesus numbered with the transgressors. What do, these people whose arms are free to move, whose feet are not pierced through with a huge nail, who have the liberty to walk on the ground of an outlying piece of the great empire? They rail on him. They wag their heads. They throw back at him his own words. "Ah, thou that destroyest the temple and buildest it in 3 days, save thyself and come down from the cross." Everyone who passes by rails at Jesus. They know his words, and they do not believe his words, and they do not believe him. For everyone who passes by, Jesus is a charlatan, a liar. Events have shown him to be a fraud. He said he would tear down and rebuild the temple, but he cannot save even himself. In all that crowd of humanity that passes by between 9 a.m. and noon, Jesus hears not one friendly voice, sees not one friendly face. The masses, to a man there present, have turned against him. Likewise, the chief priests and the scribes mocked him. He saved others. Himself he cannot save. Let Christ, the King of Israel, descend now from the cross, that we may see and believe. Even the thieves crucified with him join this uniform chorus of revilement. From the masses, from the religious authorities, from those suffering with him in their own crucifixion, it is all rejection and mockery. Then at noon, darkness falls over the whole land. It will continue until he dies. Darkness in the scriptures he knew so well indicates God's rejection. Displeased with Pharaoh, God sent a darkness over the land of Egypt that lasted 3 days, darkness so thick that it could be felt, and the Egyptians could not see even each other. That was the penultimate plague God sent upon Pharaoh. Darkness was the penultimate plague, followed by the ultimate plague being the death of every firstborn throughout the land. Here at the cross, we have a darkness not for 3 days, but 3 hours, the penultimate dreadful sign to be followed by the ultimate sign, the death of the Son. Jesus would have known the warning from the prophet Joel. The day of the Lord cometh, Joel says, it is nigh at hand, a day of darkness, a day of wrath, of punishment, of gloom. That day, which we heard about on Ash Wednesday, has now come, and it has come upon Jesus. In short, everything has turned against Jesus. The cosmos, the political world, his compatriots, his fellow religionists, his chosen companions, nature itself. There is no mercy. There is no grace. He has no comfort. Impaled upon the cross, he is utterly alone. But he is not alone in silence. A scholar has written that what made crucifixions particularly gruesome were the screams of rage and pain, the wild curses, and the outbreaks of nameless despair of the unhappy victims. There was screaming around Jesus for hours from the other crosses. Their reviling of Jesus would have been part of those ongoing screams. At the end, about 3 p.m., Jesus himself cried with a loud voice. This was Jesus' own scream, his singular crucifixion scream. He does not scream in rage or curse, and although his pain would have been the same as that for any crucified man, he might not have screamed because of the pain. He apparently did not scream when they drove in the nails, nor in the 6 hours subsequent. He cries out only at the end, throwing with his cry a question to God. Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which is being interpreted, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And then, utterly alone, he dies. When the King Jesus dies, we see what St. Paul will write about 10, 20 years later in his epistle to the Philippians. The Son of God came down from heaven to take on our humanity. Fully a man, he went on down into the depths, even of suffering, even death on a cross. When the Father sent Jesus to be human, it was not enough for him to be conceived in Mary's womb or to be born at Christmas, but he had to die on the cross. Jesus' death is not just death, it's an absolutely lonely, abandoned by all death. It is the worst it could be. It is important for us to see that it is worse than anything that has or could happen to any of us, to any other human being. The physical world may turn against us, plague, cancer, fire. Our friends may abandon us. The devastation of war, of imprisonment, of enslavement, of torture. Crucifixion is having all the worst things thrown together. It is being tested beyond your limits. Every one of us has untested limits, thank God. And every one of us at some point would break. All the sins of the world were thrown at Jesus. He had no untested limits. And at the deepest place in this pit of pain and suffering, all of it thrown together, this pit of abandonment, of isolation, in the deepest place, he found the abandonment of God. He cries out, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? But please note, when Jesus cries out, it is a question he cries. Jesus has taken on the entirety of the sins of the world, and sin means separation from God. It means darkness and gloom and divine abandonment. And nonetheless, Jesus discovers that even at the bottom of all things, a human being can still pray to God, can still ask, if nothing else, why this God to whom he is speaking, why this God has forsaken him. To be king, he must be alone on the cross. His kingship does not come from us. It does not depend on nature. It's not human acknowledgement. It does not even depend upon signs from God. Alone as king, yet he is not alone. He can cry out to God, to our God, who is also his Father. And here our King teaches us that whatever sins we have fallen into, however far down we have gone into the pits of life, we are never alone. We can always pray to God, to my God, indeed, with our King, to our Father.